record on computer.
Oh, we need to have the chat up for the actual, for Facebook. Because.
Yeah, we're actually live. Yeah. Okay. Sorry that somebody decided to start mowing outside my garage, so I don't know. Oh, well.
We can't hear it. I can at least.
Okay.
All right, guys, we're live.
Okay. And I am jumping on Facebook.
All right, now try to share it.
We're commenting on GM the Hype, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm not going to mess with Cherie music right now. Oh, you're going to keep, oh, cool. Okay. You're going to sit, who's doing that?
Me.
Oh, okay.
Stand by.
To have that on there like that?
Here we go.
Everyone can hear us now, by the way, Cherie.
Yeah, we are live.
All right. Am I unmuted? Oops. Okay, here we go. My bad. All right. Welcome to Jam the Hype Live, where we help Christian urban artists effectively influence our modern culture to live lives transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Again, my name is George Moss. So happy to be here with you this weekend. Of course, as always, got my co-host with me. Got Cherie with me. What's up, Cherie?
Hey, this is a tough one, brother. I'm struggling.
I know. I'm putting on the excited voice because we got some heavy things to talk about today. Definitely. If you haven't been up to the news, or if you haven't seen everything that has been going on with the current situation, story of Ahmaud Arbery is one that hits home once again. Yes, it's a tough one. So I didn't really want to first address this thing because this type of stuff happens too regularly for it to just jump the gun and to form an opinion right away. But after looking through this, we definitely want to just discuss based upon the information we have right now, prefacing it the fact that yes, none of us were there. We're getting reports of stuff that was going on, and as a person being in media, we know how that can be twisted and done to prove a certain narrative. But let's just give an overview of what the information that we had that we're working for. So for those of you who don't know, Ahmaud Arbery was a young man that was chased down and shot and killed while he was jogging through a neighborhood in Georgia back in February. He entered into a home that was under construction, and a guy looked at named Gregory McMichaels, spotted him going into the home, thought that he was a burglar of some sort, had suspicions, And then he gave chase. According to the police report, Michaels chased him down and got into a struggle with him. Michaels and his brother, and his son named Travis, chased him down, got into an altercation where Ahmad was shot and killed because of this altercation. Now, they claimed that it was a self-defense. 74 days later, they claimed that this was self-defense. The attorney for the homeowner actually where Ahmad actually entered into the home said that nothing was stolen. And the toxicology report of the autopsy and everything said that there was no drugs or alcohol in Ahmaud Arbery's system at the time. So now they're on the 4th district attorney assigned to the case after 2 others recuse themselves of saying that they don't want to be involved because they had conflict of interest with Gregory Michael. So now this whole investigation is not only being investigated of the situation, but also how the situation has been handled up until now. So that's kind of, I'm no news reporter, but that's sort of the gist of the story and details that we have thus far. And Cherie, I love your heart. And anytime something like this happens, I know that you are one of the first people to respond, to have something to say, to have a feeling, to have a lot to say about this. And I would love to hear your perspective of everything that's going down with this news report.
Yeah. You know, George did a great job of giving an overview. We could spend a lot of time talking about the facts, right? We could spend a lot of time reviewing what we've seen on social media. But as I was reminded from one of my African-American brothers, sorry.
It's all right.
I'm raw, y'all, so it's okay to be raw. I'm an artist anyway, right? We all are raw. That's why we artists. But you know, even if, which is not the case, but even if he was going in there to steal some lumber or copper, whatever. If you watched the tape, if you wanted to, you don't have to, but if you did, you would see that any human being who believes that they can chase down a man or a woman like they're a wild animal, hunt them, walk up to them and point their gun at them and shoot them in the chest like that you believe you have that much authority to take life. There's something desperately wrong with that. Desperately. So that's where my heart is. I mean, nobody asked them to do that. The owner of the house didn't ask them to do that. In fact, the owner of the house is like the only crime I see here is the crime that the McMichaels committed. He said that. And I want us to sit on that for a minute. They were not commissioned by anybody other than their own selves and a spirit that we must address in longer conversations. But there has to be some spirit that is demonic and evil if you can go and do that and then go home and eat supper with your family like nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I want to make sure that we even just thinking about this. Well, again, in my personal perspective and reading the details of this story and my feeling in the story, there's no excuse for this. But we also have to be careful not to read a narrative into the story that wasn't presented. Now, that could have been the case where they went home and had no feelings about it and just went and ate supper. We don't know what they were feeling afterwards. We don't know how they felt after taking a human life. And from what I saw, it wasn't them going and like shooting them and hunting them like a deer. It was going in and playing vigilante, I'm gonna, protect this neighborhood from this burglar that we see here. And from my perspective as a Black man in this country, it's hard for me not to see a framework of race in being a factor in there. But then the struggle ensued. Then if you don't comply with my orders because I have a gun, it was because the altercation got escalated because you decided to bring a gun to the fight that wasn't a fight in the first place. Then you decided to shoot because someone somehow decided, hey, you have a gun, I don't, I'm going to defend my life because I feel you're going to take it, and then you shoot them. It wasn't necessarily a hunting, but it certainly was a situation where they shot him because of a situation that they caused in the first place. From my perspective, from what I saw, I don't know how they felt when they got home. I don't know how if they went back home and just had supper and had a little party because of what they did. However, what they did do, what we did see on the camera, was nothing short of a sad, at least, evil, if we were to put it in terms that in how I would put it in terms. But
yeah, I think it's interesting. I think this is a wonderful conversation, George, because each person is going to see the tape and see it differently. I saw a hunt. I know a lot of people saw a hunt. The way that it was done, he was unsuspecting. He didn't know why they're rolling up on him. The way they jumped out, approached him with a gun, and then to shoot somebody that close, it was super close. It was like point blank, you know what I mean? And and then having somebody following with a camera, clearly, this was intentional. You were planning on escalating a situation, right? He didn't know what was about to happen. That was clear.
no.
Because he wasn't he wasn't running faster when they approached him. If you watch it, but again, we aren't law experts. Point is what we saw, and I think this is why the country is blowing up on social media about this. This was, I believe, maybe one of the most blatant, obvious, clear surround view of one of these situations. These happen all the time. We've seen many of them over the last 5 or 6 years. But this one, I think also because of COVID-19, where we're all glued to our TVs and our social medias, I think it's more on everybody's radar, right?
Yeah.
And I also love that you, as an African-American male, right? I love that you're not just justice now, join the Black Panthers. Just because you're Black, you have to be Black and angry. I love how you're we don't know how they felt. True. To me, I know for 3 months they weren't in jail, and they had made up a narrative that, according to what we're finding in the media, was not true. We will find out more. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if they ate supper. That was an example of just what do you do when you go home at night after, what
Yeah.
would I don't know. Point is, somebody's dead, a young man with the future in front of him. One more of our community is dead. And it was senseless. And I love what you said. It could have been avoided, right? You said,
Absolutely.
why this didn't have to be this way, right?
Right. And yeah, it's a terrible situation. And I just want to just think about it in a way, because this is something that millions of people do on a regular basis. I know I've been on tour with you, and I've known that you have gone into places where you shouldn't go necessarily. And the thing is, yes, maybe you shouldn't go in a home that's under construction. However, I just bought this house. I just moved into this house just a little over a year ago. While they were doing construction, while they were I wanted to go and see what was going on. I've gone into, as we were house hunting, we went into residential developments and seeing stuff that was going on, to walk in to see how the other homes were being laid out. And whether we were going there to buy those homes or not, and to be honest, we were going into some neighborhoods we know we couldn't afford to do that. But we just wanted to see, as we're house hunting, to say, man, this is what would be nice in our home, or this is how they did this. Now, that's something that tons of people do. There's videos on YouTube of people going out and looking at different things like that. Now, is it against the law to do that? Well, technically, against looking at Georgia state law, which I looked it up. In order to be trespassing, there's got to be clear signs where it says no trespassing. You have to say, they have to have a clear understanding of the property that you cannot actually enter. Once you actually enter that, you cannot, damage, violate, or steal any of the property, then it constitutes a crime. But trespassing in and of itself is a misdemeanor if you're trespassing. Burglary, that is a felony. But according to the evidence that we have from the tapes that I've seen, there was no evidence of actual trespassing because there was no sign saying no trespassing anywhere. As he goes around and the tape shows him looking around like people do when they look at new construction, it's like, hey, what's going on here? Didn't take anything, didn't damage anything. And he probably heard the neighbor. He ran out of the house like, hey, somebody is some sort of threat. We don't know what he was doing. We don't know if he was going in there to look for copper or drywall or lumber to steal, which I don't know about you. I just bought some lumber from Menards yesterday, and you can't just put that in your pocket. Like, you've got to come prepared. He didn't look like he was prepared to take anything like that. But I don't know. I don't know his intent. But him just being there, you can't prove intent by what they're doing. You have to prove by what they actually did, and the tape doesn't show that. So I find it very interesting that they would go in there and take it into their own hands to do this and chase them down with no authority. But I mean, I appreciate Neighborhood Watch, but that is taking it obviously to a level that is completely unacceptable.
Absolutely. You would also have to witness a crime to do a citizen's arrest, apparently. And so
Yes.
again, there was no crime they witnessed other than trespassing. Okay, so, but again,
And that wasn't even trespassing. Like, technically, that's not trespassing what he was doing. So there was no crime. Even the dispatcher, when they were calling on 911, they were asking, like, what is the crime? What did he do wrong? What did he do wrong? And that question was not actually answered before the shooting took place. Mm-hmm. It's a sad situation all the way around. And more information that I found out, the first initial defense was self-defense. Now, there was an altercation. There was a fight, of course, that took place. It's fight or flight. Like, if somebody comes and's blocking my way with a gun, some people will choose to fight. Some people will choose to run. He chose to fight. Whether that's a good idea or not, he has every right to defend himself if he believes somebody is. Ahmaud has every right to defend himself if he feels threatened in that situation. And they said that they would have the right to defend themselves with a gun in that situation. Obviously, I don't think it plays out that way. The tape is definitely clear as to what took place. I wish there was. Okay. But the first motive was self-defense. Later on, after talking to the attorney, did they claim that it was a citizen's arrest? Which, okay, I've got plenty of family that have been suspected of committing crimes. Let me say it, suspected of committing crimes. I ain't put my family business out there right now. And after you speak with attorneys, you try to come up with a defense and things like that. I understand the process a little bit. Well, let's just leave it at that. I understand the process a little bit. But even that defense of citizen's arrest, that doesn't hold up either. You say that in order to make a citizen's arrest, you mentioned it. You have to witness the crime being committed. And according to the surveillance and tapes that we saw, there was no crime being committed. And you have to actually witness or have knowledge of it happening right in front of you. And there was no evidence of crime actually being committed.
And then
when
you
that person
call in the police and they would instruct you, which they did not instruct them, and you can hear the call to shoot.
Yes.
What is he doing? Oh, he's running down the street with fervor, or whatever they said, like he was in a house, and it's like, okay, what did he do? Like, they were literally like confused.
So I would love to see in the comment section if you have a perspective of this. All perspectives are welcome. Like, you don't have to agree with what I think. You don't have to agree with what Cherie thinks. And I think it's important to have an important dialogue. And of course, like I said at the beginning, none of us were actually there. We're only going by reports, what we've seen from TV, from footage, from social media perspectives and things of that nature. But what really strikes a chord with this is the situation is bad. Of course, as it is, a life is lost. It's a tragedy, no doubt. But we see this tragedy on a regular basis.
Right.
Literally today, just before we went on live, I saw, on my Facebook feed, Kentucky woman shot, killed in her apartment by a police officer, wrong address. Now, this is going to be the next thing that possibly blows up, yet another hashtag to add to our list. I just read the headline, have no idea of the circumstances that happened in that scenario. But when we constantly see these headlines, when we constantly see these type of tragedies take place, and we hear these type of news reports, it makes me wonder, what is it doing to us? What is it doing to our relationships with our brothers and sisters that are police officers, our brothers and sisters that are not African-American, not Black, don't have the same experience? And what broke my heart is earlier this week, I was in a meeting with a few individuals, and one of them was expressing the fact that he didn't want to show how much he felt. He didn't want to show how much he felt bad or in the situation. He didn't want to express himself in this situation because he wasn't Black. And he was like, kind of like, that's a Black issue. And every time I speak up as a non-Black person, I kind of get shut down because I don't have the authority to speak on this situation. Therefore, he feels like he can't hurt with them, or he can't share his perspective, or his perspective is not valid in those situations. And what broke my heart the most about that is that that's a brother in Christ.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that race seems to always trump faith. And we feel like we cannot be brothers and sisters in this. How have you been processing this, and how do you feel when someone, a person that is not of color, that doesn't share the same experience, has something to chime in about?
Yeah, I think that when I heard the brother, because I was in the meeting as well, say that, I saw your face. You were just like, why would this person feel this way? And I think what, honestly, and I've said this many times in a lot of different ways, but I believe that we have failed to teach a biblical, theological basis for justice and mercy in the church. Because justice, love, and mercy are all the things that are making me cry right now. And what's making me cry right now is because I have the Spirit of the Lord inside of me. I have the Spirit of God, Yahweh. Like, I have God in me. And God's heart weeps when he sees this type of atrocity and this type of disregard for creation. And he weeps when there's injustice. And this is in the Bible. He weeps when we don't show mercy. He weeps when we don't show love. So these principles in the church are something we all should care about. It is something we all should weep over. The Bible talks about mourn with those who mourn and weep with those who weep. I'm weeping with Ahmad's mother right now. I'm weeping with his community. I'm weeping with African American community. I'm weeping because God has put it in my heart. So for me, what I would say to people who say that's a Black issue or that's this issue, like, this is a God issue. This is a kingdom issue. This is God's heart issue. But nobody wants to talk about that theology because, like you said, it goes quickly into the race thing, which race is a part of it, but so are so many other things. How child abuse happens, right? And how all kinds of different things happen. So to me, what has caused this to be a point of tension, especially in the church, is because we've separated compassion from the gospel. And that is deadly. Absolutely deadly. So deadly that there's people who are calling these men God-fearing men. And I would say, what God do you serve?
I'm with you, and I feel you on that. And the hard conversation that we have to have. It's hard to do it within the time constraints of an Instagram live, of course. So we've had conversations about this earlier. But for me, my personality is I definitely want to look at all of the different areas. And I also, in fact, and I want to preface this by saying that it's not that I don't see the obvious. I do see the obvious. My personality tends to say, well, what are we not looking at? You know, if something is going on over here, I very much so want to know what's going on over there because I don't want to be tricked. It says, you know, watch out for deception. And I want to be a watcher. I want to definitely see what's going on because if it's on the news, there's an angle, there's a reason why it's on the news, and there's a purpose behind why it's on the news. And is it accomplishing that purpose? And I see the outcome, and the outcome of the reports of all this is more divisiveness and more division rather than more unity. That's one thing that I want to talk about. But to your point about the church and lack of compassion and things like that, we also, as tough as it may seem, and this is what separates followers of Jesus, Yeshua, Yahweh, Christianity from any other religion, is that our compassion not only needs to go out to Ahmad, and not only needs to go out to Ahmad's family, his mother, his community, his legacy that he will leave behind, but also the lives that were destroyed that did this. Our heart should break that somebody would have the heart to do something as heinous as this. That humanity has come to the point where and this is I know I get pushback about this all the time, and I know this is on the internet, and I know that I'm going to get a lot of people will be like, you know, it's just this whole turn the other cheek mentality is what got us here in the first place. And I don't think that it's a situation where somebody's pulling a gun on you where you're like, all right, I'm going to turn the other cheek and just let them shoot me.
Right.
It's not what I'm talking about. However, in this situation that we have from an outside perspective, the only hate, Martin Luther King says, hate does not drive out hate. Love is what can drive out hate. And if no lie, our first fleshly response is hatred. If we're being completely honest, it's hatred for sin. It's hatred for somebody that would do this. It's hatred for racism. And it's hatred of sin, which I believe is a righteous thing. We should absolutely hate sin and everything that it brings. And if you look at Psalms 5:5, God himself makes no qualms about it. He not only says he hates sin, he hates the sinner. Like, that's a thing. Like, that's why there is heaven and hell. That's why there is eternal separation, because God hates evildoers, the evil and the evildoers. But our hearts should also break, because even though we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory, when we start to put ourselves above other people that would say, man, somehow when we ridicule people, we think that we innately put ourselves on this higher ground, instead of seeing ourselves in the fact that I may have not been the one that would pull a trigger on a Black man running through my neighborhood.
Yeah.
But my heart says, the way that I feel, maybe if I was in that situation, I'd pull the trigger with some South backcountry Georgia, Confederate beer belly white supremacists. Like, we're in the same, we're no different, and we need the compassion and we need the gospel just the same. And I feel like that's the conversation that it has to land on, because if we don't land there, we miss the point of the gospel in the beginning.
Yeah. I think today, if we could go anywhere, I think I'd love to know, George, like, in your art, 'cause we're talking about art from tragedy. For me personally, I've done a couple art pieces that have responded to racism in America. And the approach that I took on, especially one of my songs and videos called Freedom, what I was trying to communicate, and you can go to shreemusic.com and pull it up, or my YouTube page under Shree Music. But what I was trying to communicate in that piece of art was the spirit of racism. I was trying to get my viewer, my listener, to understand that just like when David was going against Goliath and the Philistines were like, it was the Philistines and what? The Philistines and the Israelites? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and the Israelites. I was like, who else was involved? It was just okay, yeah, Israelites.
Goliath was a Philistine, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so
Goliath, he was from Gath. Yep.
like he was a bully, dude. Like he was like, it said for 40 days, he was like coming up and like challenging the Israelites. And he kept saying, if anybody could beat me, like he had so much pride and narcissism and supremacy, all these things we see within the spirit of racism, some of these things, right? And he was like, and then when David came up to him, he even was like, you sent me this little dog. Like, in other words, like this little kid, like you think that's what's going to take me? Like that type of attitude is a spirit. And I think that racism in America is a spirit that has those attributes, those types of attitudes. And I think in the film, if in the short little film that I did with the music video, the idea of it was this, I wanted you to see, it was like I was being led to a drowning, and I fought, and then eventually I just gave into it. And I feel like that's how our ancestors felt back in the day. It was like, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be saved. There was this idea that there's oppression on this earth. There's this bully that's taken us out. There's these lynchings. There's this slavery. There is this oppression that is unrelentless. There's this bully in America. But you know what? They had the attitude that if I die, that's when I'm really free. When I die, I'll go home to my Lord and be free. Does that mean they didn't fight in the middle of it? They fought. But when it was time to die, MLK, when it was time to die, he died. And somebody reminded me yesterday that who has ever fought for higher things, like higher wonderful things of the kingdom, and hasn't died through a brutal, like Jesus.
All of the disciples except for one, and he died too.
Okay. And okay, like I feel like death isn't what I'm mourning with Ahmad. It's how he died and by what spirit he was put to death by. That needs to stop.
And how do you take that and turn it into inspiration? Because for me as an artist, I know that when I hear stories like this, I feel like it doesn't inspire me, to be honest. It discourages me. It makes me angry. And sometimes that stifles our creativity. But what if we could use all of this anger and passion and emotion and feelings that we have toward the goal of actually creation, toward of creativity, and actually putting something out that would inspire healing? I think that there's a ton of people that do that. I personally haven't been able to do that. And I think part of that is, if I'm being honest, part of that is a little bit of fear. It is, if I say what I really felt about some things, the people that support me may not want to support you anymore. I think that you've experienced that. I think we've all experienced that. I know personally there's a lot of artists that would have the courage to speak up and to say that. And not to say that I would not have courage. I just try to temper my own feelings and what needs to be said with striving to be at peace with all people. There's both and, it's not either or. Blessed are the peacemakers. I want to cause peace. I want to cause healing. I want to. So there's a way that we can do this in a way where it's like, yes, express your anger, express your frustration, express your perspective. But when we do that in a way, because you don't have to be a Christian to do that. I think when we do that, and we do that out of our flesh rather than out of the spirit of the gospel, the spirit of God that's within us, it causes even more division than unity. It causes more conflict than it does healing.
Sometimes, I mean, I think Ecclesiastes also says there's a time for peace and there's a time for war.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is a war. I mean, if people in the civil rights movement didn't understand there was a time for peace and a time for war, we may not be drinking from the same fountains as our white brothers and sisters. Okay. So there's a time for peace and a time for war. I think I will just go back to what I believe. The spirit in which you do it is super important, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, yes, I through my art, especially the last 3 years, have painted very graphic pictures of this monster. I really have. And it was not for the intention to make my non-Black and brown brothers feel isolated, like they can't enter in. I am inviting you into this. I'm inviting you to take a look at this bully that's in our country. And would you join forces with me and my brothers and sisters to bring this down in the name of God, in the name of God? And that's it. And I think that's what the African-American community feels. Oftentimes, I feel like we feel isolated. I will speak for myself and some of my friends, because we don't have anybody to really talk about this with, especially in the lens of faith. And we can't invite you to fight with us, because then all of a sudden I'm this angry Black woman. But if there was a bully that was destroying people and we're seeing it every day almost, don't you want to take it down?
Yeah.
Don't want to take it down. And so to the artists that are here right now, yeah, George is right. You're going to get some hate for it, for sure, because people won't understand, because they'll immediately be defensive. Listen, you should read the story of David and Goliath. When David went to go fight Goliath, even his brothers threw shade on him and said, why are you here on the front lines? Go back to the field, boy. Oh, you little conceited boy. You just came here to watch. You didn't come here to do nothing. Even his own brothers threw shade on him. So you're going to get shade, but you've got to ask yourself, who am I fighting for? God and his kingdom, his name, his glory, and his kingdom and his will. And if you have that spirit, you need to speak and you need to be brave, just like David. And I'm not asking you to do anything you can't do. Pick up that little stone that you have, whatever that stone is, if it's a song, if it's a graphic, if it's a rap, if it's lyrics, if it's dance, if it's whatever. And I want you to take that little stone you have and aim it right at the forehead of that bully in the name of God and watch it fall. But we have to do it together. And that's what we've lacked. And so back to your point, how do we get to this togetherness? Make sure the spirit at the end of the day is, if somebody does say, I hear you, Cherie, I hear you, George, I hear you, artist, how can I help? Be ready to bring them into that process of healing and help. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like sometimes we just need people to speak up for us when we don't have a voice. Because sometimes I can say something, but it doesn't have any weight unless somebody else speaks on my behalf. And sometimes we need allies. Sometimes we need people that are just going to be there to hurt with us, to feel us, but also understand that, like, everyone doesn't hurt the same. Like, it's not a Black issue. And then just because I'm Black and you're Black, we're going to feel the exact same way. There's nuances that there's importance to, there's a lot to that. And when we stop feeling the other side, when we stop feeling how our other brothers and sisters feel because of racism or because of any classism, sexism, whatever ism you want to throw at that, we lose the unity that we ought to have when the Spirit of God is there. And yes, I do believe we're up against a Goliath. And I believe that that's the opportunity that we do have in a scenario like this, because songs will be created in times like this. Art will be created. Moments in time will be created from a time like this. Yeah. And if we are not the people on the front lines willing to attack a situation like this head on and create out of this, we're leaving that momentum and that opportunity for the world to take advantage of. And I really do believe that our artists need to speak up and say something. We need to speak up and express with the creativity that we have to create beauty out of this tragedy that we've just experienced and that we experience on a regular basis in this country. There's no shortage of it.
Yeah. And you know who's modeled that well, and we talked about this before the show, was Kirk Franklin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Corey Kelly just wrote a tune that we're going to highlight on our Spotify playlist. So if you haven't heard it, don't worry, go to Jam the Hype on our Spotify. Check it out. It's called Together. And I'm going to read some of the lyrics. Is that okay, George?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, cool. So let me set this up really quick. So before this song came out, which I think it came out about 2 weeks ago, but about 4 to 5 months ago, Kirk Franklin was on Instagram lamenting the racism within the Christian music industry, specifically the Dove Awards. And he was trying to break through. He was trying to ask for unity. He wasn't being heard. And so he took to Instagram to tell his story. And he was in a very sad space. It was very sad. And he was asking for solidarity and for people to come around and to speak up against this because he needed an ally. Like you just said, right? We needed to fight it together.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if King and Country heard his Instagram post, or I don't know what happened, but somehow 4 months later, this song Together rises, and it's beautiful because if you know, it's everybody that's singing is multicultural in this whole cast, I guess you could say. So anyway, let me read just these lyrics. This is for the busted heart. This is for the question marks. This is for the outcast soul, lost control, no one knows. Sing it for the can't go back. Sing it for the broken past. Sing it for the one just found, life upside down. If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hands. If you're feeling alone and don't understand, if you're fighting in a fight of your life, then stand. We're going to make it through this hand in hand. And if we fall, we will all fall together.
Mm-hmm.
This is for the second chance. This is for the new romance. Sing it for the loved in vain, overcame. It's not too late. If you're looking for love tonight, raise your hand. Because if we fall, we will fall together. And if we rise, we will rise together.
And that's so powerful. That song was written before this incident happened, probably.
Right. Yep.
It was filmed and edited, and the video was done
Mm-hmm.
in the response to COVID-19 and all that. But there's no better time than to hear a song like that, to hear lyrics like that, and to hear it coming from a Black man in America,
yep,
a white woman from America, two Australian dudes that live over here in America. But the point is, what connects us all is not our race, it's not our politics. It is the blood of Christ that flows through our veins. It is not the water of the womb. It says blood is thicker than water. It's not your family tree. It's bigger than just your brother, your sister, your mother, your relationships. It's bigger than just the music industry. Us as believers, if we're not doing this thing together, if we're not hurting together on both sides and able to hear both sides together, we're only causing division, and that's not the Spirit of God. And anything that's not the Spirit of God is evil. Whether it is going to be evil enough to go out and shoot somebody and hunt them down on the street, that's evil. But what we don't realize is that just not hurting with your brother is also evil. Yeah. Not loving your brother and having compassion with them is also evil. And for us not to see the evil that's in our own hearts, that will quickly want to condemn someone else for the evil that's in their heart. It's like we see the plank in their or the speck in their eye without removing the plank in our own. And I feel like we have to have a mirror looking at ourselves and constantly be repenting of ourselves. Yeah. Because if we're truly walking in the Spirit of God, our hearts are going to break for the victim and for the victimizer. It is going to hurt for humanity as a whole, because this is a tragic situation all the way around because of sin. Yeah. And my hope is that through the art that we create, through the music that we make, we would be able to use this platform to share the gospel, to help people live transformed lives by the gospel that we live by of Christ.
Yeah. So I think it's important to say, when George, you say what you said, I agree. I also want to speak to you out there that are hurting right now. Those of you in the African-American community, I want to say this. I understand that there's levels to grief. Okay. So here's the levels. There's denial, there's anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And we are by no means, especially because you're artists, we want you to feel all of those stages of grief. You can, if you know what if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go into Google and look up the stages of grief. These are when things happen. This is how our body processes. This is how we go through it. Now, even the way we go through it, how long it takes, what stage comes first, second, third, or fourth, that's up, that's different from individual to individual. So I just want to encourage you that if you need to go through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, before you can get to acceptance and before you can even get to like writing a tune like together, that's okay. But all we're saying is, at the end of the day, whatever you do, if you write a tune, I mean, my tune about freedom was definitely, a spirit. I was angry. I was depressed. Like there was a song I did called Troubled was depression. God asked me and invited me to sit in all those, and to sit with him in all of those stages. And it's because of those stages that is bringing me to a space today where I can speak on these things passionately, and I can put it in context to the gospel, what I wish that leaders who had led me during my depression would have done. But I'll give a shout out to George, because he came all the way to Denver, Colorado when he saw me in my depression about these issues and sat with me for a whole day and talked with me. And that's what we need, guys. We need to show up, even if we don't see it the same way. He showed up and we ate. I don't even know. We had pizza. No, we had tacos.
Oh, yeah.
And we drank a glass of wine.
What was that? Illegal Pete's. Shout out to Illegal Pete's in Denver, Colorado.
And that meant the world to me, brother. Thank you.
I was glad to do it. But thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a fun conversation, even though it's been a hard conversation. But I think that it's one of those things that we shouldn't shy away from. But it's not something that we just want to leave here. Make sure you leave your comments and all the stuff down below. We definitely want to continue this conversation. It's not one thing that's going to just stop once we leave here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, again, we want to hear from you. So please interact with us. We are not asking you to follow our social medias just so that we can get more likes, comments, and all that stuff. But we really want to know who you are at Jam the Hype, especially you urban artists. That's who we're here for. We want to walk you through how to be an artist in this complex world and do your art really well, but understand who you are as a believer first and foremost, and as a leader. And so this conversation is void of leaders, and we need more leaders to rise up and speak on this for the perspective of the Spirit of God. So join us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Jam the Hype, and you can also join our Mighty Network, which it's a cool little thing. George, did you already talk about that?
Yeah, it's the Jam the Hype Society. If you'd like to know more about that, where we take the leaders that are in our communities, the urban leaders that are in creating music, creating art, creating content, having a small group and a small community, continue conversations like this and a whole lot more within the Jam the Hype Society. So shoot me a DM if you would like to be involved in that. It's absolutely free, so I'm not trying to bait and switch you. It's no free, but we do have to vet people because it's only the leaders that we want to have in that small group.
Yeah.
So thank you again for tuning in. Join the Jam the Hype Society by shooting me a DM. We'll be back again next week. Same time, same station. This one got a little changed up this week, but next week we'll have Derek Miner on to talk about how this situation and more will affect our future as artists and how we'll make that. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.